It has come to our attention that apparently there is the great DM crisis that we are in the middle of. And it's been going on for, I guess, a few months now. I've learned about it because Flutes Loot, Jordan from Flutes Loot, told me about it. I saw a tweet of his, and it's this big thing. And apparently, I'm always last to the party. I don't know if you feel the same way, Josh. Probably because I know I told you about it. But what is this? I mean, not enough DMs to go around. But like, why would that be a thing? I'm a little confused.
From my understanding, just the general explanation of what is the DM crisis, the great DM crisis, is just that there's all these groups and all these people who want to play, and there's not enough people to actually run the game for them. I think it's interesting. That's a problem that I think has been around for a really long time. Of you've always had your forever DMs, and I don't know what about right now makes it the great DM crisis, but I think there's one thing that's always going to come into play, right? And that's the decision to run the game and be a dungeon master, and the decision not to. I know you've joked about it before, but all of the evidence given in anyone's video or explanation on this DM crisis is anecdotal. So we're going to continue with that.
The grand tradition of anecdotal evidence. You will sit through this JNJtabletop video and hear our anecdotal evidence, because that's just how this is going to go.
Pretty much, yeah. So there's 3 different stories and personal experiences we could go with here. For the decision to DM, we have the both of us right here. Jake, why the heck would you want to be a dungeon master?
I remember watching my stepdad do it when I was a kid, and it just was so cool to basically do what I saw video games do at the time. Yes, they had video games even back then. Yes, it was on the Commodore 64 on games like Pool of Radiance and things like that, but I thought that was just so cool, and I just wanted to do it. To me, I've likened it to like a chef creating a good meal for someone to enjoy. There's a lot of fulfillment there. Is it more fun to eat than to prepare? I guess that's the question, but I think they're both great. I love eating and I love making a good meal. Like when I make my wife a meal, like it's satisfying when she's like, "Oh, this is great." I love that. Like there's an intrinsic reward there that you can't replicate just by eating.
It is rewarding. You know, there's just something about opening up your creativity and whether it's your world or someone else's world, but it's your story and idea and your NPCs and of your creation, your encounters that you're opening up and inviting your friends to kind of join your imagination.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
You really don't get opportunities to do that often in most cases. I mean, I don't know a lot about improv, but I think there's some things with improv that might be similar, but it is to even, I think it's still different. There's just something really, really cool and really fun, and there's vulnerability involved too with saying this is this concept that I came up with. These are these stories that I wanted to tell, but it's not just me telling this story. This is the background. This is what's happening. This is the quest that needs to be completed. But all of the details, I want you to do that. I want you to fulfill this quest, and I want to see how you interact with this problem that I've created. Yeah. There's nothing else like that. You don't get opportunities to do that in life. So yeah, I mean, I guess if the question for me is like, why did I want to DM? It's because I had stories and I had ideas that I thought would be fun, and I wanted to see how my friends interacted with them. And it's been a blast. I love it. It's a lot of fun. Other reason I think is because when I first started DMing, we were the ones who knew the rules. A lot of the players in our group didn't really. They were fairly new.
Yeah, there's the practical side of it for sure. And that helps build confidence, which I think is always something to consider. Like, you talk about you want the players to fill in the details. There certainly can be an inherent anxiety attached to that. Like, oh God, I have no idea how they're going to fill in the details. And then like, you've shared examples in a video we did recently about like you would do all this prep, like these if-then statements, and it was like you just had this like giant like computer game worth of code that you like hand wrote, and then of course 5 seconds in we did something you didn't expect.
Yeah.
Okay, but content creators will talk about things like that, and that can create a certain, or just your own imagination can create this anxiety about how that's going to go. But I find that thrilling. Like,
I do too.
It's like, I don't know how this is going to play out. And it's just as exciting because I know what the enemies are going to do. I know what, the world is, how they're going to react. But I'm digressing a little bit because both of us have made the decision to be the dungeon master before, and we enjoy it. So some of the anecdotal evidence that we are going to bring to the table is my cousin Michael, who is known around here, these parts, as Master Yoda I Am. He plays Mac on Mr. Yoda I Am. Yep. He plays Mac on Ancient Relics and Hook Your Religions, who is where Josh is the dungeon master, and then he played Landor on our playthrough of Dragon of Icespire Peak, and then you're also going to see him as Fontaine Fire Orb in Dragons of Stormwreck Isle when that comes out, because we're in the middle of doing that still. But we just started a little group text, and Josh was like, "Hey, Michael, you've told us you don't want to do that. You don't want to be the dungeon master. Can you just let us know a little bit about that?" And I thought his responses were, I don't want to say I expected them, but like I understood them. I get it. Mm-hmm. And what stood out to you in his responses? Like, did anything jump out at you?
I think the gist of it, right, is he doesn't feel like he has the creativity to build a world or a story, or even use a pre-written and just make the NPCs as interesting. Yeah. I think that's that. I don't want to speak for Michael, but I think a lot of people would agree with that, and for most people, at least, that's probably going to stem from just a lack of confidence in general. Like, it takes a lot to figure out those things and do it, but I think more often than not, we are our own worst critics. I know I am, at least for myself. I think you are too for yourself.
Oh yeah, I get in my own head a lot. Yes, 100%.
But so it's very easy to just kind of write that off and not try it. Realistically, just try it. Like, if that's your main reason, you are gonna think that whatever you create is worse than what everyone else thinks of it. There have been so many sessions, and we've talked about this before, and I think I'm going off on a tangent earlier than maybe I thought I would, but
go with it.
There's been so many sessions of even Ancient Relics and Hook Your Religions where it ended, and like the whole time we were playing, I'm like, this is a train wreck. I am not prepared. I had a migraine and like am just starting to feel human again, and just like I'm getting the voices wrong. I'm getting made up a name that is just stupid, or whatever, just everything, whatever you could possibly get down on. I've been there, and most of those times it has ended with, "Wow, that was a great session." Not on my part. I
can speak on the other side of it. I think you do voices very well. I've never once thought you had weird voices, except for maybe the Frost Giant King or Jarl. I was like, I don't know this, but then it was like a reference to something else. And you and Evan,
Godchild Andromedus.
Yeah,
Tim Gerard Reynolds is a legend.
Yeah. So even then,
did you hear that?
Did you just smack your teeth?
Yeah.
Yes. No, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, of course, there's different sessions of Dungeons and Dragons can be rewarding for different things, and we had a combat dry spell, but that wasn't your fault. I was just like, I guess, super combat horny. Like, that's just like, I gotta kill something. Josh, put something in my path. I need to kill it. But like, that sometimes it's just where the story is, and it is what it is, and that's okay. That's a whole table thing, and we did this thing where we talked about it, and then we ended up having combat. So yeah, I think there's that perception that you're out there alone, and it really is not true. It's not.
And the other thing with just on the creativity aspect is some NPCs, like you might have like a sentence written about them, but the way the players and world building in general, the way the players interact with whatever you put out is really what builds it and really what creates it and makes it great. You just have one little simple thing, like you have Kel sitting there in a tavern saying, "Who loves orange soda?" Kel loves orange soda. I do. Like, and that's all you have. You have that one moment, and you could literally steal that. And especially now, because I think imagine a lot of our viewers don't even know what that is, whether they're too old or too young. But you know, sometimes it's as simple as just something stupid like that, and your players latch onto it, and then they actually make it great. It's easy to get down on yourself on the creativity side of things. That was probably one that I resonate with, but it makes me sad.
Well, Michael's
Just
also a
do
very
it.
creative person too. So when you
Yeah.
hear that, it's like, I want to challenge that, but I also want to tell you I hear you. They both exist. And you know, we also alluded to it a little bit before. You and I both find it very rewarding experience, and he's not sure that he would find it as fun or rewarding as playing. And I think that's a very common thing. I'm not going to dive into that any more than we really have already, because that's a subjective thing. If he just has that approach, okay, like you know, I disagree, but that's me. You know, that's just how it is. But he also referenced things like balancing encounters and how much time that's going to take, or like creative use of monsters and creatures in the game, and how that can be another intimidating thing. And you know, nobody starts out a master at encounter building. You know, that's just how it goes. I know I asked him specifically, like, okay, have you looked at the rules before? He said he's glanced at them. And then I also said, like, have you also looked at monsters? And he said, no, not really, because I like being surprised as a player. So I think it's fair to say, and Michael, if you're watching this, please correct me if I am wrong in the comment section. I think it's fair to say that that is much more of a, a guess, a perception, something he's imagining is true more than he actually knows that part is true. And again, I'm open to being wrong. I'm open to being wrong about a lot of things, so never feel weird about challenging me in the comment section.
Yeah, that's what it's there for, and that's what the Discord is there for. 'Cause, you know, just healthy conversation and discourse. That's what drives us all to be better, and that just in general. I won't go too far into that, but I think a lot of people have that thought. A lot of people who have never even tried to build an encounter have that thought and perception on it, and a lot of that, maybe we'll get into this later, but a lot of that comes from the content that they watch, or and I might even be responsible for. I believe his words were, the CR system seems to make absolutely no sense at all, and I want to take partial responsibility for that, because I've definitely I've done encounters for you guys and said I should have used a CR, like one CR10 monster, but I used a CR13 or 12, and then also threw in one of these, you know, whatever.
A little icing on the cake. Here you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Enjoy. So basically, Josh makes it look really difficult, guys. That's what he's trying to say.
Well, no, I've joked about the CR system.
I know.
And we do have a video on the CR system that you should check out, because it really isn't as bad as you think it might be. I think it's just the perception of it is a little off. And we also have videos. This is probably more helpful if you're looking for a direct impact on your game. We have videos on encounter building in general. So if you feel like you need help with your encounters, check that out, because it'll be a huge asset to you, whether you use the CR system or not. Another point that he brought up was it's a lot of responsibility and a lot of time to DM. And since it's a game, and you know, he is in a position of leadership at work, he has a lot of responsibilities at work. You know, it's something that he wants to get away from. He doesn't want to be the guy or the person. And I understand that. That's to say
who
about
hasn't
that.
felt
It's
that way
just,
at some point?
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, but that's subjective for him too.
Yes, absolutely is subjective. I'd say in most cases everybody feels that way or has felt that way at one point. For most of your tables, like, that should be a sometimes thing. You know, but Michael is in a unique position in that he's the only player in our group who either has never dungeon DM'd or has no interest in it. Like, Evan has a bunch of times. I have, obviously you have, and Izzy, I don't think she has yet, but she wants to.
She's asking. She's asking questions.
It'll yeah, yep. That'll happen at some point. So he really doesn't need to. I feel like it's the responsibility of the group, if you have people who don't always want to be a DM, to share that burden. It's not really a burden, but you know, if everybody feels that, where they don't want that responsibility, but you all want to play, it's just kind of a respect thing that you have for each other, where you're like, well, we all want to play this game. I'll do a couple sessions, you'll do a couple sessions, whatever. you have your main DM and you just give them a break every now.
Well, one of the things just to bring it back a little bit to where we learned about this was in the tweet that I saw from Flutes Loot was he seemed like he was trying to understand why this is a 5e problem. Because I mean, I haven't played third edition, but I have played all of the other ones. And this is by far the easiest. Like this is like it, and I think third edition is when it got got super crunch. Like this is it got really out of hand with 3E from my understanding. So when I hear that, I scratched my head too. I was like, what could that even be? Like I don't understand. Like if you have criticisms of 5e, that's one thing, but how could this be contributing to people saying I don't want to be the dungeon master here? This is poppycock. I don't know. Like, what is this?
I think it's interesting that people say that this is a 5e problem for a couple of reasons, right? Like one, what you just said, widely regarded as the easiest version of the game so far. Another reason, and like, don't get mad at this, but like, it is by far the most popular edition that has ever existed of the game.
It's
There's more people playing now than there ever have been before, which would imply that there are more people. If more people are playing, then that means that someone is running those games. I don't know. I'm not trying to be a jerk by saying that, but it just the math just adds up. That's just
there's something's weird, and that's what you get with anecdotal evidence, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a perception, it's a feeling, and
sure,
feelings are subjective. So it's like, don't tell me I'm wrong. Well, like, I disagree. What you feel is valid. Like, you got to talk that through.
Yeah, and to go back into our anecdotal evidence and really anything I've seen or heard when I've talked to people about DMing and why they don't want to DM or anything like that. Not that I've talked to a lot of people about it, but I have had these conversations before. It's usually very similar to what Michael has said, and none of those reasons those reasons are system agnostic. It's a lack of confidence, a lack of understanding of the rules. You don't want the responsibility. You aren't creative enough. Any of those. It's all of those reasons, aside from maybe the challenge rating system doesn't make any sense. aside from that.
So aside from it being your fault specifically, Josh, how else do we go?
Aside from that, it would be the same for any version of this game or any other tabletop RPG. Those are just, I don't want to say it's a you problem, because that's definitely not what I'm meaning, but it's something that the rule set is not going to help or hurt. It could be the easiest system or the most difficult system, but most people's reasoning for not wanting to run a game has nothing to do with the actual rules of said game. So is this a 5e problem? Personally, I would say no. I don't think this is a 5e problem. Would you even call this a DM crisis, Jake?
No. I mean, that label is, content creators are known for fanning the flames of drama to suit their needs.
Who would do that?
I kind of think, I kind of think that's what the label's like the DM crisis. And so if we're going to do that, I will call this is not a DM crisis. This is a leadership crisis. And what I mean by that is there's so many great content creators out there. There's so many great dungeon masters out there. So, you take the face of this whole thing, right? The Matt Mercer effect. He has an incredible cast of characters that he's working with. It's literally his job. And he's an outstanding dungeon master. Like, he's fantastic at it. So if you're consuming Critical Role content and you think that's what you have to do to be a dungeon master, is he actively contributing to that? No, he's just being a DM, and he's just doing it in front of a lot of people because they hit record and stream live, all that kind of stuff. That is what it is. It's a show. But one of the things that jumped out to me is because this was a theory of mine, I asked Michael, I said, what kind of content do you consume? And he said comedy and live play was like his thing. And so I said, because I was trying not to lead him, but I said, would you say that watching the comedy and, that kind of content, does that make it seem more difficult to you or less difficult? And he just said more difficult. There's a lot of comedy out there. Like I saw one, I think it was a TikTok of someone who was just, joking about how strong and broken paladins can be. And so he's like rolls a whole bunch of dice and it's like, after all of the stupid things I could do as a paladin, I deal 87 points of, damage. And so the DM, it just flashes to a little image of the notebook that says like 82 hit points for the monster. And so they just jokingly put a 1 in front of it. And it's like, oh, wow, big, good hit. And so, but that's the kind of thing where it's like, oh my gosh, you can never account for such power, or, and it encourages this weird approach, but it's comedy. But you consume enough of that, and I think that does contribute to this perception. Wow, it's so hard to be the dungeon master for 5th edition.
Yeah.
Content creators are kind of creating the problem unintentionally, some intentionally because they like clicks and drama, but
yes, the content that you're creating are problems.
Ooh, there you
Stop
go.
it.
There you go.
Maybe that's what it that's the thumbnail title card.
Just stop. Enough is enough.
Content you're creating is problems. Yeah,
but you understand what I mean when I say leadership crisis more, right? Like it's
absolutely, and that's another one of the things that Michael had mentioned that we didn't even talk about is just in addition to he might not be creative enough. He mentioned the way that I build worlds and NPCs, and the way that you have done that as well with your NPCs, and specifically with what Michael has played from you with Dragon of Icespire Peak and now Stormwreck Isle. Even on a smaller scale than like a Matt Mercer or Brenly Mulligan or insert name here, like whoever your favorite DM is. Even at a local level, if you have a good DM, I think you compare yourself to them, and that's a personal thing. That's a confidence thing, and it shouldn't take away from your game. It should be like, wow, it's great that we have great DMs or whatever. Yeah. But an even better DM, when it's your turn to sit in the DM chair, they're gonna help you. And if you have a good, healthy group, they're going to be available to answer questions and help you build encounters. Definitely. And help give you resources for building NPCs. Maybe they'll direct you to JNJtabletop. Who knows?
Heck yeah. Well, I could even say this, Josh, because I know that I introduced D&D to you, but after watching you DM, I felt like I became a better DM. I taught Josh how to play, so everything he does is because of me. It's just stupid.
We all learn things from each other.
Exactly. Michael, if ever you do decide to be the dungeon master, I would love to learn from you.
Yeah, and I'm sure we would. The distinction between bad D&D and toxic D&D has kind of skewed perceptions here, but if you play and you don't understand the rules and it's your first time, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And don't be afraid to do that. Jake, what do you think about bad D&D? Is there even such thing? Like
you said, this is all with the non-toxic environment qualifier, but like there's so many different kinds out there. I've heard Dungeon Dudes talk about beer and pretzels D&D, and it's more just like you're doing a dungeon delve, or some people like to literally just RP and improv the entire time. So D&D takes as many forms as there are tables, and whatever you want to call bad D&D, like maybe it's something that lacks player agency. Yeah, but if it's your first time, my expectations are so low. Like I am all aboard the railroad. I'm here for it. Let's go. Like that's my approach to it. And guess what? When you get experience, sometimes that bad D&D leads to good D&D.
It's like something that we talked about recently in our video on the challenge rating system. When you try out your first encounter and you use that CR system, maybe it's going to be too easy. There's going to be problems, but it's experience, and it's going to help you, and you're going to know if you like doing it or not. So whether there is or isn't an actual DM crisis going on, I really don't think it's 5e's fault. But if it is, and if that's the reason for you, we have a lot of videos to help kind of make it easy and simple and help you understand what's going on with the 5th edition rule set of this game. And if it's a creativity problem or anything like that, well, we have videos to help you with that too. So why don't you check out our DM playlist, which is going to go over everything. And then check out our video on the CR system, because I know a lot of people have problems with that too.
You will go to the challenge rating system.